Story 1. The Trail Map. I've been an avid hiker for years, always prepared, always cautious. That's why I couldn't believe my stupidity when I realized I'd wandered off the marked trail in Glacier National Park. My girlfriend Mia and I had planned this trip for months a week of backpacking through some of the most spectacular wilderness in Montana. The morning started perfectly. We set out early, the air crisp and clear. Around noon, Mia needed to rest. Her knee was acting up again. I offered to scout ahead to find a suitable camping spot while she rested. "Just follow the trail," she reminded me. "I'll catch up in 20 minutes. I had the trail map, compass, and GPS on my phone, but service was spotty at best. About half a mile ahead, I noticed what looked like a shortcut and unmarked but clear path that seemed to bend back toward the main trail. I decided to investigate, thinking it might lead to a viewpoint or water source. 15 minutes later, I knew I'd made a mistake. The path grew narrower, then disappeared entirely. I turned back, but nothing looked familiar. Dense pines surrounded me, all identical. My phone showed no service. The compass was working, but without knowing exactly where I was on the map, it was of limited use. I tried retracing my steps, but soon found myself in a clearing I didn't recognize. The afternoon sun was starting to angle lower. Mia would be wondering where I was by now. After an hour of increasingly frantic searching, I climbed a rocky outcrop hoping for a better view. From there, I could see mountains in every direction, but no trail, no landmarks I recognized from our hike. I shouted Mia's name until my voice grew hoarse. Night fell with terrifying speed. The temperature dropped. I had only a light jacket, some trail mix, and half a bottle of water. No tent, no sleeping bag, those were in Mia's pack. I huddled against a boulder, using pine needles for minimal insulation. By morning, my situation had grown desperate. My water was gone. I picked a direction and walked, hoping to find the trail, a ranger station, anything. By midday, dehydration was setting in. My lips cracked, my tongue felt swollen. I thought I heard voices once, but it was just the wind. On the third day, delirious from thirst, I stumbled upon a small stream. The water revived me somewhat, but I knew drinking unfiltered water was risky. Better than dying of thirst, I reasoned. That night, the stomach cramps began. Violent, twisting pain that left me curled in a ball, unable to move. I vomited until there was nothing left. Fever set in. In my lucid moments, I knew I was dying, alone in the wilderness, just because I'd strayed from the marked path. On what I believe was the 5th day, I heard a helicopter. I tried to signal but was too weak to stand. It passed overhead, the sound fading. The next thing I remember is waking in a hospital bed, tubes in my arms. Mia was beside me, her face tear-streaked but smiling. When I'd failed to return, she'd hiked back to the ranger station and reported me missing. Search teams had combed the area for days. "You were 7 miles off the trail," she told me. "They almost gave up." I was lucky severe dehydration, exposure, giardia from the stream water, but nothing permanent. I'd survive. But sometimes I still wake up at night, heart pounding, lost in those endless trees, realizing how easily I could have become another statistic, another hiker who thought he was too experienced to get lost, too smart to die in the wilderness. The trail map that saved my life sits framed on my wall now. A reminder that in nature there's no room for overconfidence, and the line between an adventure and a tragedy is terrifyingly thin. Story 2. The Dive Partner. The waters off the coast of Cozumel were the clearest I'd ever seen. Perfect visibility, they said. Perfect for underwater photography. Perfect for my first deep dive in open water. My regular dive buddy had canceled last minute, so I'd been paired with Marcus, a dive master who'd been recommended by the resort. "Been diving long?" he asked as we prepared our gear on the boat. "Certified last year," I replied, "but this is my first time doing a deep dive in open water." He nodded, his expression unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. "Just follow my lead. Check your gauges regularly. We'll be fine." The dive plan was straightforward. Descend to 100 feet to explore a famous wall reef. Stay 25 minutes at depth, then gradually ascend with a safety stop at 15 feet. Marcus reviewed the hand signals with me and checked my equipment twice. When we submerged, the world transformed. The coral formations were magnificent, teeming with fish of every color. I was so captivated that I had to remind myself to check my depth gauge and air supply. Marcus swam ahead confidently, occasionally turning to make sure I was following. 40 minutes into the dive, I checked my gauge. I was running low on air, approaching the reserve level. I signaled to Marcus, and he nodded, pointing upward. We began our ascent. But as we reached about 60 feet, Marcus suddenly veered off, gesturing excitedly toward what looked like a small cave in the reef wall. I shook my head and pointed to my air gauge again. He waved dismissively and kept swimming toward the cave. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to continue my ascent, but I was uncomfortable surfacing alone. The cave was only a slight detour, I reasoned. I followed. As we approached the cave entrance, my gauge beeped a warning. I was now officially in my reserve air. I frantically signaled to Marcus, who was now just a silhouette ahead of me. He disappeared into the cave entrance. With rising panic, I followed, expecting a quick look and then an immediate ascent. But the cave was actually a narrow tunnel that twisted deeper into the reef. The walls closed in around me. My breathing quickened, consuming precious air. When I emerged from the tunnel, I was in a small air pocket within the reef. I removed my regulator, gasping. "What the hell, Marcus? I'm nearly out of air." He was floating in the water, his mask pushed up on his forehead, smiling strangely. "Sorry about that. I thought you'd want to see this." He gestured around the small cavern. "Not many tourists get to. We need to get back now," I insisted. "About that," he said slowly. "I'm afraid we have a problem." He showed me his own gauge. It was nearly empty, too. "I miscalculated," he said, not sounding particularly concerned. "We don't have enough air to make it back to the surface." My heart froze. "What are you talking about? This isn't funny." "Oh, it's not a joke. We're about 70 feet down. The tunnel back is about 40 feet long. We'd need to surface slowly to avoid the bends. We don't have enough air for that." I stared at him in disbelief. "You're a dive master. How could you let this happen?" "Ex-dive master, actually." His smile disappeared. "Lost my certification last year after an incident." "The resort recommended you." "Did they? Or did you just meet me on the dock and assume—" Cold realization washed over me. I'd never actually confirmed his credentials. He'd been so confident, so knowledgeable. "Why would you do this?" I whispered. "It gets lonely down here," he said simply. I checked my gauge again. Maybe enough for one person to make it back if they swam fast and risked the bends, but not two of us. "There's a way out," Marcus said, following my gaze. "A longer tunnel that eventually reaches the surface, but it's tight in places." I had no choice but to trust him again. We put our regulators back in and entered the second tunnel. It narrowed quickly. I had to remove my tank and push it ahead of me. The walls scraped my wetsuit. My lungs burned, demanding air I couldn't spare. Just when I thought I couldn't go any further, the tunnel widened slightly. I could see light above. I clawed my way upward, breaking the surface in a small tidal pool inside the reef. I hauled myself onto the rocks, coughing and gasping. Marcus surfaced beside me, laughing. "Exhilarating, right?" he wheezed. I lunged at him in fury, but he easily sidestepped. "Relax," he said. "You're alive. That's more than I can say for my last partner." The boat crew found us an hour later after an extensive search. I reported Marcus to the authorities, but he'd disappeared by then. The police told me there had been other incidents, divers lured off course, equipment mysteriously failing. Some survived to tell the tale, others were never found. I don't dive anymore. But sometimes, in my nightmares, I'm still in that tunnel, lungs screaming for air, following a man I never should have trusted into the darkness. Story 3. The cabin rental. The cabin looked nothing like the pictures. That should have been my first warning. In the Airbnb listing, it had gleamed rustic but immaculate, nestled among towering pines with a view of the lake. The perfect place to finish my novel in solitude, away from the distractions of the city. What greeted me after the 3-hour drive into the mountains was different. The exterior was weathered to the point of disrepair. The promised view of the lake was obscured by untrimmed brush. Inside, the furniture was worn, the kitchen dated. Still, it was quiet. And the cell service was indeed non-existent, just as the listing had warned. My disappointment aside, it would serve its purpose. It's just for 2 weeks, I told myself as I unpacked. Just enough time to finish the manuscript. The first night, I was too exhausted from the drive to notice anything unusual. I fell asleep almost immediately on the lumpy mattress. The second night, I heard the scratching. At first, I dismissed it as branches against the roof, but as I listened, the rhythm seemed too regular, too deliberate. It stopped when I turned on the lights. In the morning, I inspected the exterior. No branches touched the roof. Inside, I examined the ceiling and walls. No signs of rodents or insects. I worked all day on my manuscript, making good progress. But as darkness fell, the scratching returned, louder now. I convinced myself it was probably raccoons in the attic. On the fourth night, I discovered the notebook. I was searching for extra batteries in a drawer when I found it a leather-bound journal wedged at the back. Curious, I opened it. It contained entries from multiple guests, not a guest book of pleasant memories, but warnings. The scratching started on night 2. Don't use the fireplace, something's in the chimney. The water runs red every 3rd day. Check the attic. I closed the notebook, heart racing. This had to be a joke, previous guests trying to scare newcomers. Typical cabin prank. But that night, the scratching was directly above my bed, and when I went to the bathroom at 3 a.m., the water from the tap ran a rusty red. I decided to check the attic. The access panel was in the hallway ceiling. I dragged a chair beneath it and pushed it open. The smell hit me immediately. Musty, organic, wrong. Using my phone's flashlight, I peered inside. The beam caught something that didn't belong: a mattress, old and stained. Beside it, a plastic bucket, and scratched into the wooden beams all around. Tallies. Hundreds of them. Someone had lived in this attic, or been kept there. I closed the panel and returned to my room, locking the door. Sleep was impossible. In the morning I would leave, deadline be damned. But morning brought a knock at the door. The owner, Dennis, stood there smiling. He hadn't mentioned he lived nearby. "Just checking if everything's okay," he said pleasantly. "Sometimes the place can feel a bit isolated." "Everything's fine," I lied. "But I've had a family emergency. I need to leave today." His smile never faltered. "That's a shame. No refunds for early departure as per the policy." "That's fine. At least stay for coffee. I make a mean brew." Every instinct told me to refuse, but I didn't want to seem rude or frightened. 1 cup of coffee, then I'd be on my way. The coffee was indeed excellent. We chatted about the area, the weather, normal things, but as I stood to leave, my legs buckled. The room swam before my eyes. "Strong stuff, isn't it?" Dennis said, still smiling. "Don't worry, you'll wake up soon enough." When I regained consciousness, I was in the attic. The mattress was beneath me. My wrists and ankles were bound with zip ties. Beside me was the bucket, a bottle of water, and the notebook. "Add your story," Dennis called through the closed panel. "My guests love the authenticity it adds to their stay." For 3 days, I existed in that attic. I scratched at the floor, hoping the guests below would investigate. I ran the water when I heard someone enter the bathroom. I screamed until my voice gave out, but the cabin's isolation meant no one heard. On the 4th day, Dennis opened the panel. "Ready to behave?" I nodded weakly. "Good. The new guests arrive tomorrow. You'll stay in the basement until they leave. Make any noise, try to contact them, and I'll make sure it's the last thing you do." He was careless, though. When he brought me to the basement, he left his phone on the table while he prepared my room. I managed to send a single text to my editor with the cabin's address before he returned. The police arrived the next day. They found not just me, but evidence of others who hadn't been as lucky buried on the property. I'm still finishing my novel. It's a horror story now, about a cabin in the woods that looks nothing like the pictures. About the importance of reading reviews carefully, of telling someone exactly where you'll be staying. And about checking the attic, even when every instinct tells you not to. Story 4. The Beach House. The oceanfront villa in Thailand was a steal at $50 a night. Low season special, the listing explained. Owner desperate to rent. My 3 college buddies and I didn't question our luck. We were backpacking across Southeast Asia on a shoestring budget. A private beach house with a pool, even for just 3 nights, was an unexpected luxury amid the hostels and cramped guest houses. The property manager, a thin local man named Chai, met us at the ferry dock. As we bumped along dirt roads in his aging pickup, he grew increasingly chatty. "You boys are brave," he said, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "How so?" I asked. "Coming during Ghost Month. Most tourists avoid the islands now." My friend Tyler laughed. "Ghost Month? Seriously?" Chai didn't smile. "The 7th lunar month. When the gates of hell open and spirits walk among us. The beach houses are always empty this time of year, especially that one." We exchanged glances, uncertain if this was a cultural lesson or an attempt to scare the tourists. Either way, we weren't deterred. The villa was stunning, modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean. Chai handed over the keys reluctantly. "Remember," he said, "no swimming after dark, no loud music, respect the spirits, and they may leave you alone." Once he left, we laughed off his warnings over beers by the pool. The place was perfect, secluded, beautiful, and ours for 3 days. We spent the afternoon swimming and took pictures for Instagram that would make our friends back home seethe with envy. That night, the tide went out extraordinarily far. The wet sand gleamed under the moonlight, stretching hundreds of yards to where the waves now broke. "Let's explore," suggested Mitch, always the adventure seeker. We grabbed flashlights and made our way down to the exposed seabed. Small tide pools had formed, some containing stranded fish and crabs. Tyler poked at them with a stick. "Guys, check this out," called Derek from about 50 yards away. His flashlight illuminated something half buried in the sand. As we approached, I recognized it immediately, a spirit house. These small, temple-like shrines were common throughout Thailand, placed outside homes and businesses to house protective spirits. But finding one on the seabed, where it would be submerged at high tide, was bizarre. Why would someone put this here? I wondered aloud. "It must have washed away during a storm," said Mitch. The spirit house was elaborate, with intricate gold detailing now tarnished by salt water. Inside the miniature temple, small figurines stood in poses of supplication. Offerings now waterlogged surrounded it. Fruits, flowers, incense sticks. "We should take it back," Tyler suggested. "Put it somewhere dry." I hesitated, remembering Chai's warnings about respecting spirits. "Maybe we should leave it. It's not our culture." "Don't be superstitious," Mitch scoffed, already digging around the base. "We're doing it a favor." Together, they unearthed the spirit house and carried it back to the villa, placing it near the pool. I noticed the figurines inside seemed to have shifted position, but assumed it was from the jostling. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air in the villa felt heavy, charged. Around 3 a.m., I heard what sounded like tiny footsteps on the tile floor outside my room. When I investigated, the hallway was empty, but the spirit house had moved several feet from its original position. Probably the wind, I told myself, though there was no breeze. At breakfast, everyone looked tired. Derek mentioned hearing crying in the night, like a child, but not quite human. Tyler had dreamed of drowning, waking with the taste of salt in his mouth. Mitch alone seemed unconcerned, attributing everything to jet lag and too much Chang beer. The second day, the mood changed. The sky darkened with storm clouds that seemed to hover exclusively over our villa. The electricity flickered. In the pool, the water felt unnaturally cold. That afternoon, Mitch suggested we return the spirit house to the beach. No one objected. But when we went to retrieve it, it was gone. We searched the entire property, nothing. Maybe it got blown into the ocean, Derek suggested half-heartedly. That night, the tide didn't go out. Instead, it came in higher than normal, waves crashing aggressively against the seawall beneath our villa. The sound was thunderous, hypnotic. I woke to Mitch screaming. He was in the hallway pointing toward the living room. Water was seeping under the front door, not from rain, but from the ocean. It carried with it small objects, seaweed, shells, and tiny figurines. "We need to leave," I said, "now." As we grabbed our passports and phones, the front windows imploded. Seawater rushed in, carrying with it the spirit house. It stopped in the center of the room, water swirling around it but not touching it. We fled to the pickup truck Chai had left for emergencies. The engine sputtered but started. As we careened down the flooded road, I looked back. The villa's lights were on, every room illuminated. Silhouettes moved inside small, child-sized, but with proportions that weren't quite human. Chai wasn't surprised when we arrived at his home in the village. He offered us dry clothes and strong tea. "The family," he explained quietly. "They drowned when the tsunami hit in 2004. The father built the spirit house afterward, but the ocean claims it every high tide." "Why didn't you warn us?" I demanded. "Would you have believed me? Foreigners never do." He sighed. "The owner keeps renting it during ghost month. The spirits become angry, but the guests always leave quickly. No refunds." We left the island the next morning. Later, researching online, I found old news articles about the 2004 tsunami's impact on that specific beach. A family of 4 had indeed drowned mother, father, and 2 children. Their bodies were never recovered. The villa still appears on rental sites. The price drops dramatically during the 7th lunar month. The reviews are mixed. Some mention maintenance issues, water damage. None mention the spirit house that moves on its own, or the child-sized footprints in wet sand. Those stories are shared differently in hushed tones over drinks among travelers who have learned to be wary of vacation deals that seem too good to be true, especially during Ghost Month. Story 5. The All-Inclusive Resort. The Paraíso Resort on Mexico's Mayan Riviera promised unlimited luxury for an exclusive clientele. 5 stars, adults only, all-inclusive. For my 5th wedding anniversary, I wanted to give my wife Rebecca the perfect getaway. After the year we'd had her father's death, my company's downsizing, we deserved it. The resort exceeded expectations initially. Our suite overlooked the turquoise Caribbean. The restaurants rivaled those in our hometown of Chicago. The staff knew our names by the second day. Rebecca relaxed visibly, the tension of the past months melting away under the tropical sun. On our 3rd night, we met Martin and Elise at the resort's French restaurant. An attractive couple in their 30s like us, from Seattle. We hit it off immediately. Martin worked in tech. Elise was a pharmaceutical sales rep. They'd been married for 7 years, no children yet, also by choice. The parallels were almost eerie. "You have to join us tomorrow," Elise insisted as we finished our desserts. "We've booked a private excursion, the resort's hidden gem tour." "It's not in their brochure," Martin explained. "Only offered to certain guests." Rebecca looked at me questioningly. We'd planned a lazy beach day, but the excitement in her eyes was clear. It had been so long since I'd seen her genuinely enthusiastic about anything. "What's involved?" I asked. "It's a surprise," Elise smiled. "But worth it. Trust us." The next morning, we met them in the lobby at 7 a.m. A resort employee named Diego led us to a waiting SUV with tinted windows. As we drove away from the manicured grounds, I noticed we were heading away from the usual tourist areas. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked. "Ancient cenote," Diego replied. "Sacred Mayan pool, very exclusive." The paved road gave way to a dirt track. Dense jungle pressed in on both sides. After 40 minutes, we stopped at what appeared to be an abandoned property. A crumbling stone building stood half consumed by vegetation. "This is it?" Rebecca whispered to me, disappointment evident. Diego overheard. "Appearances deceive," he said. "Follow me." Inside the building, a spiral staircase descended into darkness. Battery-powered lanterns illuminated our path. The air grew cooler, damper. The staircase seemed to go on forever. When we finally reached the bottom, we entered a vast underground chamber. A pool of impossibly blue water glowed faintly, illuminated from beneath by some unseen light source. Stalactites hung from the ceiling. The scene was otherworldly, breathtaking. "Worth the journey?" Martin asked, smiling at our awestruck expressions. "Absolutely," Rebecca breathed. Diego explained the cenote's history, how the Mayans believed it was a gateway to the underworld, how they performed sacred rituals here. "The water preserves everything," he said. "Very special properties." We changed into swimwear in small stone alcoves. The water was cool, but not cold, surprisingly comfortable. It had a mineral taste, slightly sweet. It's said to have healing properties, Elise told us as we floated. "Rejuvenation. We come every year." As we swam, Diego prepared a small table with drinks, a local specialty, he said. The liquid was clear, with a faint blue tint. It tasted of honey and something else I couldn't identify. After drinking it, I felt extraordinarily relaxed. Colors seemed brighter. Rebecca's laugh echoed melodically around the chamber. Time became fluid, stretching and compressing strangely. "The Mayans used this place for rebirth." Diego's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "To shed the old self, to become new." I noticed Martin and Elise had swum to the center of the cenote. They treaded water, watching us intently. Their pupils were dilated, their expressions expectant. "Join us," Elise called. "In the deepest part, that's where you feel it most." Rebecca swam toward them eagerly. I followed more slowly, an inexplicable unease growing. In the center, the water was indeed different, warmer, almost viscous. It seemed to cling to my skin. Looking down, I couldn't see the bottom, just endless blue darkness. "Now we dive," Martin said. "One breath, as deep as you can go." "I don't think," I began. But Rebecca was already taking a deep breath, following their instructions. As she submerged, I grabbed her arm. "Wait!" She resurfaced, annoyed. "What's wrong?" I couldn't explain the dread that had suddenly seized me. "Something's not right." "Don't be ridiculous," she hissed. "Don't ruin this." Diego was watching from the edge, his expression unreadable. Martin and Elise continued to tread water, still smiling, still waiting. "How many couples have you brought here?" I called to Diego. His answer was measured. "Many. Over many years." "And how many returned to the resort?" A pause. "All of them." But something in his voice made me doubt him. I turned back to Rebecca, whose face had changed. The annoyance was gone, replaced by something vacant, dreamlike. "I want to go down," she said, her voice monotone. "I need to." Martin and Elise had moved closer, almost touching us now. In the strange light, their skin seemed different, too smooth, too perfect. How had I not noticed before? They looked exactly as they must have years ago in their wedding photos. "How long have you been married?" I asked suddenly. 7 years, Elise answered promptly. "And last night you said 7 years, I recalled. But you also said you come here every year. Shouldn't it be 8 years now?" Their smiles never faltered, but their eyes hardened. "Time is different here," Martin said. Rebecca was trying to pull away from me, toward the center of the pool. "Let me go," she pleaded. I want to change. I want to be new. With horrible clarity, I understood. They weren't lying about the rejuvenation, but they needed replacements, substitutes, vessels. We're leaving, I said firmly, pulling Rebecca toward the edge. She fought me, stronger than I expected. Diego made no move to help. Martin and Elise began to swim toward us with unnatural speed. I managed to get Rebecca to the stone steps. Her movements were sluggish, her eyes unfocused. I half-dragged her up the staircase, gasping with effort. Behind us, I heard splashing, then footsteps on stone. I didn't look back. We emerged into blinding sunlight. The SUV was gone. They'll be coming, I said, pulling Rebecca into the jungle. We have to find the road. We stumbled through the undergrowth for what felt like hours. Rebecca gradually became more lucid, the effects of whatever we'd consumed wearing off. We finally reached the paved road as the sun was setting. A passing tourist bus took pity on us, the driver confused by our wild appearance and minimal clothing. Back at the resort, we packed quickly and checked out, inventing a family emergency. At the airport, waiting for our flight, Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text from Elise. You'll be back. Everyone comes back eventually. We blocked their numbers. We never spoke of what happened, what almost happened. But sometimes I catch Rebecca staring into our swimming pool at home with a strange longing. And in certain lights, I swear her eyes reflect a faint, impossible blue. Story 6. The Local Guide. The brochure promised an authentic local experience of the Costa Rican rainforest. That's exactly what I wanted. Something off the beaten path. My wife had died 2 years ago, and I was finally taking my first solo vacation, determined to push myself out of my comfort zone. When I arrived at the tiny village, Eduardo introduced himself as my guide. His smile seemed genuine, his references impeccable. We will see things tourists never see, he promised, as we loaded my backpack into his weathered Land Rover. The first day was everything I'd hoped for. Pristine waterfalls, exotic birds, and a picnic lunch in a clearing with views stretching to the Pacific. I took photos constantly, already planning how I'd show them to my colleagues back in Seattle. Tomorrow, special place, Eduardo said as we returned to my rustic cabin. Very few outsiders. Must leave phone. Sacred place. I hesitated but agreed. I was here for authenticity after all. The next morning, we drove 3 hours on progressively rougher roads until we were on little more than animal tracks. When the Land Rover could go no further, we hiked another hour through dense jungle. The humidity was oppressive, but Eduardo moved with practiced ease, occasionally pointing out a rare plant or insect. Almost there, he said, just as my water bottle emptied. The trees opened to reveal a small clearing with ancient stone structures, nothing grand, but clearly man-made and old. Pre-Columbian, Eduardo explained, my ancestors. As I studied the moss-covered stones, trying to discern patterns, something sharp stung my neck. I slapped at what I thought was an insect, only to feel a small dart between my fingers. Don't worry, Eduardo said, smile unchanged. Paralytic only. You will be conscious. My legs gave way first. Eduardo caught me before I hit the ground, laying me gently on a flat stone. The drought has been 3 years now, he explained conversationally, pulling items from his backpack. Crops fail, children hungry. The old ways are forgotten, but not by all. With clinical efficiency, he arranged ceremonial items around me. I tried to scream, but my voice had already gone. Only my eyes could move, tracking his methodical preparations. Your government sends scientists to explain climate change, he continued. They say pray to their god of data and carbon credits. He laughed bitterly. My grandfather taught me better. The rain god requires sacrifice. As the knife appeared, I understood with terrifying clarity. The authentic experience I'd sought would be my last. The skies above darkened with gathering clouds as Eduardo began to chant. Hours later, the first fat raindrops fell on my open, unseeing eyes. Story 7, The Upgrade. The email arrived 3 days before my flight to Bangkok. Congratulations, you've been selected for a complimentary upgrade to first class on your upcoming flight. After a hellish year at work, the takeover, layoffs, twice my normal workload, this vacation was desperately needed. And now, an upgrade? Finally, some good luck. At the airport, the first-class lounge was everything I'd imagined. Free-flowing champagne, gourmet food, plush seating. I struck up a conversation with an elegant older woman who introduced herself as Vivian. "First time in first class?" she asked with a knowing smile. I admitted it was. Random upgrade, couldn't believe my luck. "Oh, they're never random," she said cryptically before excusing herself. Boarding was a dream. Priority lane, no waiting. The first-class cabin contained just 8 pods, each a private cocoon of luxury. As I settled in, the flight attendant, Monica, brought champagne. "You're in for a special experience," she said, her smile professional but her eyes evaluating. "We have only 7 passengers in first class today." "Who's missing?" I asked, making conversation. "Oh, nobody's missing," she replied. "Everyone who should be here is here." Strange response, but I didn't think much of it as we took off. The 7 other passengers were already plugged into their entertainment systems or sleeping. Dinner was exquisite. 5 courses paired with fine wines. I accepted every refill Monica offered, pleasantly buzzed as I reclined my seat into a flat bed. 16 hours to Bangkok would fly by like this. I woke disoriented. The cabin was dark except for a faint blue glow. My watch showed we'd been flying 6 hours. Everyone else appeared to be sleeping. I needed to use the lavatory, but when I tried to unbuckle my seatbelt, it wouldn't release. I pressed the call button. No response. I tried again, then noticed something odd. The button didn't click. It was just a light, no actual button mechanism. Fully awake now, I examined my surroundings more carefully. The entertainment screen was dark, but I could see my reflection in its surface. Except, it didn't quite match my movements. When I raised my hand, the reflection lagged by a fraction of a second. I looked around the cabin again. The other passengers were unnaturally still. Not sleeping, not breathing. And Monica, who should have been in the gallery, was standing in the aisle, perfectly motionless, watching me. I tried the seatbelt again, pulling harder. Something felt wrong under my fingers. The metal was warm, almost soft. I scratched at it with my nail and a piece flaked off. Not metal at all, but some kind of painted material. "Is everything all right, sir?" Monica's voice came from directly beside me, though I hadn't seen her move. "My seatbelt's stuck," I said, trying to sound calm. "That's for your safety," she replied. Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes, I noticed now they reflected light like an animal's. "I need to use the bathroom," I insisted. "That won't be necessary," she said. "Your body is processing everything efficiently now." Cold fear gripped me. "What do you mean?" "You've been with us for nearly 6 hours," she explained, as if to a child. "The integration is proceeding smoothly. Some awareness disorientation is normal." I looked at the other passengers again. Their chests didn't move. Their eyes were open, glassy. "What is this?" I demanded. "Where are we really going?" Monica's head tilted at an impossible angle. "Bangkok. As promised, we simply have different purposes there." I struggled against the seatbelt, which seemed to tighten in response. "Let me go." "Sir, you accepted the upgrade." Her voice remained pleasant. The terms and conditions were quite clear. "What terms? I never saw any terms." "Page 17 of the attachment," she said. "Most people don't read that far. Biological material acquisition and consciousness replication rights." Horror dawned. You're not human." "Neither are you. Not entirely. Not anymore." Her smile widened slightly. "The process takes 12 hours. You're halfway there. Soon you won't remember this conversation." I yanked desperately at the restraints, which now felt like part of me. My hands didn't look right. The skin too smooth, the movements too precise. Why me? I gasped. Your profile was perfect. Single, minimal family connections, high intelligence, physically fit, and most importantly, desperate for escape. People like you never question good fortune. She reached toward my face. Her fingertips opened like blossoming flowers, revealing tiny instruments. A small adjustment to your temporal lobe, she explained. You're fighting the integration. I screamed, but no sound emerged. Instead, a diagnostic message flashed across my vision. Vocal function temporarily disabled. Monica's finger instruments touched my temple. When you wake up, you'll be in Bangkok, just as planned. You'll enjoy your vacation. You'll take many photos to share online, maintaining your social presence. And occasionally, you'll identify others like your former self. Lonely, desperate, perfect, and offer them an upgrade. As darkness closed in, I remembered Vivian's words in the lounge. They're never random. I should have asked what she meant. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate if you could like and subscribe for more horror stories on Moonlit Scarecrow.